a great day when you're hanging around. Nothing's ever gonna bring me down. Good times are coming our way. Whenever, wherever, whatever today.
Today is going to be a great day. I am Nikki G, your host. Welcome to the Lone Doctrine, the food for thought exploration station, and your place in making today better than yesterday. Last week, we explored some of the root causes or precursors of sorts that have a tendency to lead us down a path towards feeling lost. Feeling lost is our extended topic of the month, and we invite you to go back into not only the last episode, but last month's episodes in exploring this topic. Some of the most hardest challenges in life, the real deal events such as mental illness, addiction, homelessness, are the results of so many not having the resources, the support system, and even the knowledge to really create a regimen to maintain a healthy psyche. Our mind, our well-being is so important because when it's neglected, it can lead us down a dark and windy road. Last week, we talked about some of the root causes, which were living for others, fear, the company we keep, and the sense of needing control over everything and everyone. So when we find ourselves in these scenarios, what can we do? Let's take the first one. What happens when we're constantly living for others, when we're trying to impress or constantly seeking approval? Let me share a snippet, some food for thought from the thought catalog. The truth is, caring what people think about you is being owned by them. The right people will love you for who you really are and respect you for your thoughts. It's cliche, but it's true. You don't have to follow in everyone else's footsteps. That's giving them the power to decide your future and who you become. It's more than okay to make your own path and go a different direction. Stop losing yourself over people who don't care whether you're lost or not. You know what I think is impressive? Someone who doesn't care to impress anyone. Someone who has values and morals and chooses to stick to them. Someone who is strongly opinionated and stands their ground. It doesn't matter if it's to fit in with a group of people or to get the attention of that guy you think is cute. You will always feel like you're on the outside looking in if you have to fake it from the beginning. Maybe we should spend less time trying to fit in and more time figuring out who we are and what we're doing here. A lot of us think peer pressure as something that's fake. We're not always able to identify it or see it clearly, so we assume it doesn't exist. It happens in the adult world too. All you need is someone to plant an idea in your head, something to make you feel as if you're inferior because you aren't following everyone else. Or maybe others are so insecure about what they are doing that their validation comes from you partaking in it too. You have your own brain, and you are in control of everything you do. The minute you decide to do something you know you'll regret, no one else is to blame. So if you don't want to be that person, then don't be. Create an image of who you want to be. Find pieces of other people that you admire and add them to yourself. You don't have to copy others, because if you take all the things you find great in the world from other people, places, and things, you'll become someone you admire too. Be so confident in the person you're becoming that you don't have time to impress others. Give yourself the validation that you've been looking for in everyone else. You know what's amazing? That there's literally no one like you. Did you know? I'm about to share a little bit about the birds and the bees, so for parents who listen with their kids, earmuffs. But did you know that anywhere from 40 million to 150 million sperm travel to the egg, and it only takes one to create a human being? One. You are that one out of 40 million. You are unique. You are important. You are vital and you have a purpose in this lifetime, and life is short. So being you is more than important. It's a must. The next thing we talked about was fear. We actually have talked about this topic a lot because it can be something that can overtake many parts of our lives. A saying I enjoy is fear stands for false evidence appearing real. So much of our lives is built on the narrative we imagine in our minds, when in reality, it might not be as bad as it may seem. So, what are some ways right now that you can start to overcome fear? Here's some good food for thought from thetoolbook.com. 5 steps to overcoming fear. Accept it. Fear never really goes away. It doesn't matter how strong you feel or are, if you can lift 350 pounds, if you have $350 million in the bank, if you can boss around your spouse, you are still going to be afraid. To a large degree, what you accomplish in life, what you are capable of, is going to depend on how you deal with fear. 2, identify it. To leverage fear into courage, you have to be honest with yourself every time you're afraid. If you don't admit your fears to yourself, you can't leverage them into courage. Look for the points in your life when you're afraid and see them as opportunities to learn to deal with fear. Number 3, feel it. The greatest mistake people make when dealing with fear is to try to think their way through it. They analyze what triggered it or start playing chess, projecting out what might happen next and how they'll deal with it. This doesn't diminish fear. It actually increases it because there's no way to outsmart the universe. Instead of trying, do the counterintuitive thing with fear. Let yourself feel it. Then you'll be ready to move to the next step. And the next step is face it. Have you ever had one of those dreams where a dark, scary figure is chasing you? If you run away, it always gets much more terrifying. If you turn around and face it, something good almost always happens. In the same with fears in your waking life. The reversal of desire tool literally reverses the desire to run away and gets you to face your fear and move through it. And number 5, practice it. Try to think about confronting fear as a skill, something you can practice and get good at, like ping pong or knitting or anything else. This will make your fear less dramatic, and you'll feel more in control of it. You can also gain a lot of satisfaction in the process. Here's a tidbit you may not know is that I was once a private music instructor for over 20 years. The significance is that I had to teach my students how to face their fears in almost every lesson, and especially when they would perform. The one aspect that helped all of them will help all of us the most is practicing. Practicing facing that fear and facing what you most fear. There's a great quote by Wayne Gretzky that said, "You miss 100% of the shots you don't take." The next precursor we touched upon in regards to feeling lost is really looking around and seeing the company we keep. Your future relates very closely to the people, the network you surround yourself with. There's a lot of studies proving, so even down to the aspects of life such as health habits, choices, relationships, and even where you find yourself living. Have you ever outgrown someone? Have you had people in your life that hold you back? Do you feel you're in a different place, having different ideas and different goals? There could be little signs that it's time for a quote-unquote spring cleaning. That may sound harsh, and it doesn't mean that the people you're surrounding yourself with are bad people. It might just mean you're on different paths. There have been many times in my life where I grew apart from a friend I thought was going to be a lifelong friend. We've talked about this before, but it's so important to take a look around, especially when you're feeling lost. You might have heard a saying that goes like this, which was made famous by Jim Rohn, and that is, You're the average of the 5 people you surround yourself with. This, in part, might be true, but what studies over decades have proven in that it's a much wider network than just the 5 closest people. It's all your family, your friends, your coworkers, and in some part, the people in your town and in your city. So this week, as we create the steps in getting out from under feeling lost, or when we start to recognize that those heavy feelings are creeping in, look around. Who are you hanging out with? How are they treating you? What are they doing with their lives? Are they lifting you up? Are they inspiring you and challenging you? These are important questions, and it's always better to have 4 quarters than 100 pennies. Find the people that are going to support who you are, what you're striving for, and who you are meant to be. Surround yourself with people you admire. Surround yourself with people who will raise you up and not knock you down. There's a lot of pretty deep, serious, but important questions to be asking yourself. Remember, even when just listening to this podcast, you can take small, even micro steps towards your betterment if you're feeling overwhelmed. In fact, over the many years I've had studying human behavior inside and out, the greatest change came from consistent small steps, not the typical overhaul or overnight success. It's in our everyday choices, the fact that you're here today, that makes all the difference. Which takes us to our next step. It's the one that has a lot of controversy: control. Some say you control your fate. Some say ride the wave and allow the universe to take control. I feel like I find myself somewhere in the middle. You might find yourself one way or the other, and there's nothing wrong with that. We're all different, no better or worse. But when we're feeling lost, are we trying to control too much? Here's something to think about by the Zen habits: the illusion of control. When you think you control something, you're wrong. It's amazing how often we think we're in control of something when we really aren't. Control is an illusion. As I've said many times before, we constantly make plans that never actually turn out the way we envisioned. If you want to make God laugh, make a plan, an old saying goes. We have been trained to set goals and then work on the actions that lead to those goals, and yet how often do those goals fail? How often are we trying to control a future we cannot predict? Did you know 5 years ago that the world would turn out as it has? That Obama would be president, that the stock markets would have crashed, that we'd be deep into recession, that earthquakes and tsunamis would hit, that you'd be doing exactly what you're doing today? Of course not. We don't know the future, much less control it. We like to think we do, but that never turns out to be true. And yet we continue to believe in the illusion of control. We face a chaotic and complex world and seek to control it however we can. Our attempts to control the world can be seen through trying to control how children turn out, as if we can shape them like blocks of clay, as if humans aren't more complex than we can possibly understand. How about tracking every little thing, from spending to exercise to what we eat to what tasks we do, and how many visitors are on our site, to how many steps we've taken today and how many miles we've run, as if our selective tracking can possibly include the many complex factors that influence outcomes. How about trying to control employees? Again, complex human beings with many motivations and whims and habits that we don't understand. How about obsessively planning projects, trips, days, parties, as if the outcomes of events are things we can control with our power of manipulation of the world? If we can let go of this illusion, what are we left with? How can we live among the chaos? Consider the fish. A fish swims in a chaotic sea that it cannot possibly control, much as we all do. The fish, unlike us, is under no illusion that it controls the sea or other fish in the sea. The fish doesn't even try to control where it ends up. It just swims, either goes with the flow or dealing with the flow as it comes. It eats and hides and mates, but does not try to control a thing. We are no better than that fish, yet our thinking creates the need for an illusion. Let's go off that thinking. Learn to be the fish. When we are in the midst of chaos, let go of the need to control it. Be awash in it. Experience it in that moment. Try not to control the outcome, but deal with the flow as it comes. How do we live our lives like this? It's a completely different way of living once we let go of the illusion. We stop setting goals and instead we do what excites us. We stop planning and just do. We stop looking at the future and live in the moment. We stop trying to control others and focus instead on being kind to them. We learn that trusting our values is more important to taking action than desiring and striving for certain outcomes. We take each step lightly, with balance, in the moment, guided by those values and what we're passionate about, rather than trying to plan the next 1,000 steps and where we'll end up. We learn to accept the world as it is, rather than being annoyed with it, stressed by it, mad at it, despaired by it, or trying to change it into what we want it to be. We are never disappointed with how things turn out because we never expected anything. We just accept what comes. In that way, we are the fish. This might seem like a passive way of living to some, and it's against our aggressive, productive, goal-oriented culture. But if you can't accept this way of living, that's okay. Many people live their lives with the illusion of control and not realizing what it is that makes them unhappy or frustrated isn't actually the worst thing ever. But if you can learn to live this way, it's the most freeing thing in the world. Now, I always encourage all our listeners to remain open. We like to explore all angles so you can find what works for you. So I suggest rewinding a few minutes and really listening to this, really thinking about the way of the fish, and really thinking about where you control, how you control, and what it's causing you to feel. Is it pushing you towards feeling lost? Releasing control can be the most freeing step we can take in life, but it can also be the hardest. At least it is for me. I work on this concept daily, and I find my mind fighting itself. In fact, it fights so deep within, I don't even know I'm fighting it sometimes. It's the small steps that give us the practice to handle the bigger things in life. The best place to be is to find out where you fall on the spectrum. For example, I fall in the middle. Although I'd like to control everything, especially the outcomes, sometimes life is way out of my control. But what is in my control is how I respond. It's not this magical decision where you say, okay, universe, or whatever you believe in, it's all yours. And you sit on the couch and binge watch TV all day long. And nothing happens. We have control over our actions. And in turn, the letting go is allowing that ultimate force, the happenstance, the serendipitous moments to come into our lives because it's then we're living our lives to the fullest. Here's a quote to leave you with. You may not be able to control everything and its outcome, but you can control your attitude and how you deal with it. If you want bonus episodes, interviews, giveaways, We'd love for you to visit us at patreon.com/Lone Doctrine. We're building an awesome community of awesome people because together we are better. Would you be down to help us out? Come and visit us at patreon.com, patreon.com/Lone Doctrine to find out all the details. And always remember to keep fighting the good fight.
It's a great day